Hi, my name is Walt Goodridge. I'm the author of Turn Your Passion into Profit. I'm going to share with you my story of how I quit my job, escaped the rat race, and ran off to a tropical island in the Pacific. I'm originally from Jamaica, West Indies, and my family came to the States when I was young, and I ended up actually going to high school and college in the United States. I went to Columbia University, majored in civil engineering. The only reason I ended up in engineering was because my counselor in high school, Miss Charlotte Huey, said, "Walt, you're good in math and science, you need to be an engineer, and you're going to Columbia." So I followed her lead. I applied to Princeton, Columbia, Harvard, and Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, a couple other schools, Cooper Union, I believe, as well, and got into Columbia and Princeton and chose Columbia because it was right there in New York where I was living at the time. The only reason I chose civil engineering was because I really didn't like engineering, but it ended up being the least of the evils that I had to choose from. So I ended up being a civil engineer, ended up working in corporate America after graduation, worked for the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. I was on the 73rd floor of the World Trade Center #1. While I was in college, to take a step back, I had an interest in music, always had an interest in music. It was a way for me to connect to my Jamaican roots. So during the 4 years that I was in college, and also for about a year after that, I was Sir Walt, the reggae DJ on WKCR FM, that's Columbia University's radio station. And I had a show on Thursday nights from 11:30 to 1 a.m. And I kept doing that even while I was working as a civil engineer. When I started work as an engineer, I remember the first day I got there, working on the 72nd floor of the World Trade Center, just started as an associate civil engineer, and there were other fellows who started the same day I was, and they were sitting and planning their 40 years and retirement. So let me just repeat that. There were guys there who were as young as I was, just starting in the corporate world as engineers, and they were planning what they would do in 20 years, in 30 years, where they would be, how much money they would be making, what position they would be in, and how they would retire. And they were all planning this within their first day on the job. When I saw that, I realized within the first 15 minutes of that first day in my first job in corporate America, I realized I had to get out. I realized I absolutely hated it. I realized that I didn't want to be like them. I didn't want to be there planning and to be there for 40 years. So I did everything that I could to attempt to escape. I looked at starting my own business. I looked at continuing in the music industry. I started managing artists. I started a record label with friends and artists who I met during my radio days. Eventually, I started a record label, started putting out music from some of my friends who I went to college with, as well as others who I had met in the industry. And did that for about a year or two. And then one day, I was on a call with someone I'd met at a music industry convention. We saw some of my music, some of the records that I had been putting out in the stores, and he called the number on the back and said, "Hey, Mr. Goodridge, saw your records in the stores. I'd like, would you be able to help me do the same thing? How do I get distribution? How do I get, my stores written about in the magazine?" So I spent about an hour with him on the phone, giving him all the tips I could, how to do this, how to do that. And then at the end of the call, he said, "Wow, I really appreciate all the help you've provided. I would have been willing to pay you for it if you had asked me." So then a light bulb went on in my mind, and I realized that at that time, there wasn't any guide, any step-by-step guide to show young hip-hop music entrepreneurs how to start their own record label and release their own music. So I decided to write one. I had no writing experience to speak of, no journalism background, but I realized that there was a need there, and it's something that I really gravitated towards, sharing knowledge. So I put it together and wrote my first 250-page book in about 3 weeks of nonstop writing. And then from there, I released it. This was before the age of the internet, so I self-published the book, set up a mailbox, and within a few months of that release, I was able to match my civil engineering income. So let me put this in perspective. I had gone to college for 4 years, got a civil engineering degree, worked in corporate America and was making $40,000 to $50,000 a year. And at the same time, I wrote a book, a 250-page book in 3 weeks, and marketed it through mail order, and was making another $4,000 to $5,000 a month doing that as well. So I had matched my civil engineering income with something that was based on my passion and my interest and just filling a need. But I still didn't have the courage to walk away from my job. I know I had a fear that, the minute I walked away, that things would just crumble and then I'd be left without a regular job, but also without a means of income. So it still took me a while to end up leaving corporate America. And that happened 7 years later. And the way that happened is this. At that time, a friend of mine who I had gone to college with, C. Thomas Gambrell, he introduced me to a network marketing company. And some of you may be familiar with those types of companies like Mary Kay and Amway and Excel. And the company that I joined was American Communications Network. And one of the nice things about those types of companies is that they have a training system that is based on personal growth. So they realize that one of the reasons that you'll be successful in life is because of the way you think. Your thoughts will control your destiny. So they focus on personal growth and recommend books like Think and Grow Rich, The Power of Positive Thinking, audio tapes like Brian Tracy's Psychology of Achievement, Tony Robbins' Personal Power, Les Brown, Live Your Dreams, a lot of unique products that changed the way that I thought about myself. And it was at one of those leadership trainings that ACN conducted. This was in New York at the time. It was a Sunday. And it was an all-day training designed to really get your mind thinking on a whole different level. And something that the speaker said at that leadership training really pushed a button. And I can't remember exactly what it was, but I remember the moment I looked at my good friend, C. Thomas, and we both nodded to each other from across the room because we both realized that we had made the decision at that time to quit our jobs. And sure enough, that was on a Sunday. And then by the Monday, I had taken off from work. I didn't go into work that Monday. I needed time to reflect and plan. So I wrote my 2-line resignation letter. And then on Tuesday morning, I walked it into my job and handed it to my supervisor. And it simply said, "To whom it may concern, this is to inform you that as of August 5th, I shall no longer be employed as a civil engineer with the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey." And at that point, I walked away. I think I gave them my 2 weeks notice, I'm not sure. But I walked away from corporate America and have been free ever since. But the story just begins there, because that's when the fun starts. Because at the time, I didn't realize that I was not prepared at all to be a full-time entrepreneur. One of the things that an education does, one of the things that working in, as an employee does, is it just simply prepares you to do more of the same. So I wasn't prepared to be a full-time entrepreneur living on my own and surviving on my own. So it took me a while to really get the hang of it. I got evicted from 3 different apartments. I got my electricity turned off, got my gas turned off. So I went through a lot of ups and downs, ended up having to sleep on my friend's couches, different friends for different periods of time. At one point, I actually ended up moving back home for a little while. So I went through a lot of ups and downs in order to really learn what it took to be a full-time entrepreneur. So after a while, I got it right, ended up writing some more books and reached a point where I could, sustain myself on my own. Now, fast forward a couple of years, and it's now 2005, December of 2005, and I run into a good friend of mine, Ken, who was one of the artists in the group The God Squad, one of the artists I released on the record label a few years earlier. And Ken was still in the music industry. He was doing producing, and he worked with some Japanese producers and went to Japan to work with them, and they brought him to Saipan, a little island that is a favorite vacation spot for Japanese. And Ken had a wonderful time. And when I ran into him in 2005, we were at a party in Brooklyn, and he told me all about it. Mentioned nice weather, warm weather, friendly people, pretty girls, and something just clicked in my mind just from the way he described it. And I made a decision right then and there that I was going to Saipan. Didn't know anybody there. That was December 2005, and then by February 2006, I was on a one-way flight from New York to Saipan. as one of the top 3 decisions I ever made in my life. One of them was quitting my job. The other one was joining that network marketing company. And the third is moving to Saipan. Best decision I ever made in my life. And that's the story of how I quit my job, escaped the rat race, ran off to a tropical island in the Pacific, and now where I'm filming this video to encourage you to do the same. And if you'd like to see the full story behind that, you can check out Jamaica on Saipan for all the details, all the step-by-step and photos as well of the actual journey. In coaching over the years, I realized that there are 2 qualities that you need in order to achieve anything that you want in life. And in my opinion, that those 2 qualities are courage and discipline. And that makes sense. You have to have the courage to do the things you want to do and the discipline to keep doing it, even when you've been evicted 3 times, even when your gas is turned off, even when your friends and family are saying you're crazy, even when your parents are telling you to go get a real job. So I believe it takes courage and discipline in order to do the things, to achieve whatever it is you want to do. So where does that courage come from? I believe that courage comes from you having compelling enough reason for doing it. For me, as I mentioned, that reason was essentially fear. When I showed up at work that first day in corporate America all those years ago, the fear that gripped me when I saw my future, when I realized that I would be just like these guys working there 40, 50 years and then just retiring and never feeling fulfilled, never feeling like I was doing what I was put on the planet to do. So it was the fear of failure, the fear of mediocrity, fear of not living my dream, fear of being trapped, fear of not having freedom. So that's what motivated me, the desire for freedom and the fear of being trapped in a situation that I didn't want to be trapped in. So my suggestion is that you figure out what it is the reason that is compelling enough for you to find the courage and the discipline to pursue your passion, to turn your passion into profit. Because only you can decide what that is. For some people it might be their children, for some people it might be their parents, for some people it might be, just fulfilling your destiny, fulfilling your purpose, whatever it is that you believe you're here to do on the planet. So that's why I wanted to share with you my story of what motivated me to do what I do and to live my dream and to turn my passion into profit. And I hope that it's been helpful to you. And if you have any questions at all, any requests, please feel free to add it in the comment section below, and I'll be sure to answer as many as I can. Thanks.
One more thing.
One more thing. In coaching people over the years, I realized that a lot of people come up with excuses as to why they can't do the thing that they want to do, whether it's quitting their job, whether it's starting a business, whether it's putting money aside in order to, do whatever it is that they want to do. And all of those are just excuses. You have to act as if there's no tomorrow. You have to act as if there's no other alternative. When I quit my job, I didn't have a savings, I didn't have anything to fall back on, but I knew that if I didn't do it at that time, that I could find a whole bunch of excuses that would prevent me from doing it. So I just jumped in even before all my ducks were in a row. And with that, I'd like to suggest this to you. There's a book that I wrote that is called Ducks in a Row: How to Find the Courage to Finally Quit Your Soul-Draining, Life-Sapping, Energy-Depleting, and Freedom-Robbing Job Now Before It's Too Late, and Live Passionately Ever After. I'm going to provide a link to this book, the PDF edition of this book, absolutely free. It's going to be in the description section under this video if you're watching it on YouTube. And you can click on it, download it right away, and read it as a first step to turning your passion into profit. And I'm sure you might find a lot of useful information there in terms of what motivated me, the thought processes, and how I overcame each one in order to really jump out and quit my job, and then later on to actually travel 8,000 miles across the planet to live where I really wanted to live and where I'd be happiest. So with that said, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.